3 seconds. That's how long my mother-in-law stared at me after saying, "The help doesn't eat with family." Nobody at the table spoke. Not my husband. Not his sister. Not even the waiter standing nearby. I slowly placed the salad bowl on the table, looked directly into her eyes, and smiled. Then I said 7 words that turned the entire weekend upside down. Actually, I own this entire resort. The silence that followed was louder than any argument. My name is Emma. And until that weekend, my husband's family thought I was just a quiet woman who worked in hotels. I never corrected them. Not because I was ashamed, because I wanted to know how they treated people when they believed those people had nothing to offer. Tom and I had been married for 14 months. He knew I owned a hospitality company, but he never cared about titles or money. That was one of the reasons I fell in love with him. His mother, Diane, was different. She judged everyone within seconds. The clothes you wore, the watch on your wrist, the car you drove. In her world, status came before character. Every summer, she organized a luxury family reunion, and this year she proudly booked a beautiful oceanfront resort she'd found online. What she didn't know was that she'd booked one of mine. My company operated several resorts under a corporate brand instead of my personal name. I preferred it that way. Guests came for the experience, not because they recognized the owner. I had spent nearly 4 months supervising renovations at this property before handing daily operations to my management team. When we arrived, every employee greeted me with polite professionalism instead of familiarity. Exactly as I'd instructed. I wanted a quiet weekend, nothing more. On the first evening, dinner was served on a terrace overlooking the ocean. Halfway through the meal, I noticed the salad had been delayed. Old habits die hard. Before building my company, I'd spent years waiting tables, cleaning rooms, and carrying trays twice my weight. So I stood up, walked to the service station, picked up the salad bowl myself, and carried it back. That was when Diane laughed softly. "The help doesn't eat with family," she said, reaching for her wine as though she'd simply pointed out a misplaced fork. The words weren't shouted. They didn't need to be. Every conversation stopped instantly. I carefully placed the bowl in the center of the table. Then I looked at her. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," I said calmly. She smiled politely. "I don't believe there has." I nodded once. "There has." She frowned. "What exactly do you mean?" I took a slow breath. "This resort belongs to my company." She blinked. "I'm sorry?" "I own it." No one moved. Tom looked at me with complete disbelief. "You never told me this was your property." "You never asked," I replied with a small smile. His sister nearly dropped her glass. His uncle whispered, "She's joking." At that exact moment, the general manager walked over. "Good evening, Miss Carter," he said warmly. "I wanted to make sure the renovations in the West Wing met your expectations." I smiled. "They look perfect, thank you." He nodded respectfully before walking away. The color disappeared from Diane's face. For the first time since I'd met her, she had nothing to say. Dinner continued in complete silence. Later that evening, I stood alone by the beach listening to the waves when Diane approached carrying 2 glasses of water. She handed me one. "I owe you an apology." I accepted the glass but stayed quiet. She sighed. "I've spent my whole life deciding who people are before learning anything about them." I didn't interrupt. "I saw you carrying food," she continued, "and I assumed your place." I looked out at the ocean. "You weren't judging my job," I said softly. "You were judging my worth." Her eyes filled with tears. "You're right. I've embarrassed myself." I finally turned toward her. "The painful part isn't what you said. It's how easily you believed it." She lowered her head. "I'm sorry." This time, I believed her. The next morning, something unexpected happened. At breakfast, Diane stood up before anyone touched their food. She looked around the table and said, "I'd like everyone to know I was wrong yesterday. I judged Emma before I knew her. I confused service with weakness, and I hope none of you ever make the mistake I did." No one applauded. No dramatic speeches followed. Just quiet understanding. As we packed to leave that afternoon, Diane hugged me for the first time. Not because I owned the resort, but because she had finally seen the woman she'd refused to notice before. And that's the lesson I carried home. People reveal their character long before they discover yours. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't proving someone wrong. It's giving them the chance to realize it themselves.